All right, it's recording, and we will start my screen. And this is, I put a lifesaver in. That's gonna be a bad idea because it's gonna sound like you did. Already. All right. Let's dive in. All right. So if you were on yesterday, last week, by the way, happy early Thanksgiving, everybody. I know we've probably got a bunch of people that'll watch this later because of that. Last week we went over reviewing your 21, what that looks like, what you should be doing to review 21, and then kind of making sure that your mindset and skill set are correct, and making sure that you've got everything kind of lined up to jump into 22. So what we're going to do today, talking about picking your streams of business, planning your flow with your sphere of influence, and then talking a little bit about how to automate, systemize, and kind of execute on your particular activities. So we'll jump right in. The first thing to talk about is your successful agents have at minimum 3 different streams of business. The really successful ones have up to 5 or 6. So what I would look at this is I would say, what do you enjoy doing? So are you a type that is, and let me admit some, okay, there we go. Oh, they're admitting. Alice, are you admitting, or were they just let in? Okay, cool. All right. So what fits your personality? We've found that if you're a non-salesy type and you think, hey, I'm going to start cold calling, you're just not going to do it. So know yourself and know what your weaknesses are and know what your strengths are. If you are a big in-person person, make sure that you kind of adjust your streams of business to the type of personality you are. If you know that, hey, I am a very introverted, I don't really enjoy talking to people, well, maybe then something that has to do more in the way of mail and kind of indirect marketing is more your speed. So, and then the other thing that I would really look at when we sit down and we say, hey, we're going to pick these things. I've mentioned this before, but what can you do that you will do with consistency? So if you know that you can do, I can do a lot of things that I won't do, right? If you know that you're the type of person that's going to go and work out for 2 hours every day, and you say, hey, that's my plan, great. But if you know you're the type of person that's going to, go for a walk 3 times a week and you have the plan to go to the gym for 2 hours a day, you're not going to do any of it. So, and with consistency is the biggest key here. No matter what you do, I would encourage you to do it I would much rather you do 1 or 2 activities with consistency than 7 activities with no consistency. And we'll talk about that. And then the multiple streams of business help avoid the roller coaster. So I view a couple of them as very active when you're talking about, if you're looking at sub owners or expireds or geographic farming, those are fairly active. Your sphere of influence, depending on, is more of a passive stream. So when one goes a little bit colder, the other streams can kind of pick up that slack and avoid that real estate roller coaster that we've talked about in the past. So just a couple of examples. Obviously, your sphere of influence, we'll talk about that probably the most today, because from what we've talked about with you guys, most of your business comes from there. And statistically speaking, 70% of realtors' business comes from their sphere. I really think that number 2 here is something that is way underutilized, which would be referrals from vendors or other agents. That would be really leveraging you guys send a lot of business to home inspectors, to lenders, to insurance people, and then also leveraging your relationships with them, and then leveraging your relationships with agents from even other offices within the company. And one of those things that, in my personal opinion, I think that going to the company events like Ignite help you develop those relationships. I've developed a lot of relationships with even agents within the company that have sent me business, and I've sent them business because we have those relationships. And I think also starting to develop your relationships more nationwide. We obviously have, relocation and outbound referrals, but there's a lot of groups that are more national that I think are worth looking at and starting to develop at least, hey, they know Peg is in Clarkston if I have somebody that's going that way. Geofarming is fairly self-explanatory. Online leads, fairly self-explanatory. For sale by owns, expireds. Your past clients and your referrals. I know I separated those from your sphere of influence. I'll kind of go into why that is. And then, of course, open houses. I know some of them, now that the houses are staying on the market just a little bit longer, you actually have the chance to do open houses. So I think that is if I was going to pick from here, if we were going to pick 3 that I think are going to be most relevant to our office, I would say your sphere, your past clients, and then maybe your open houses, with the vendor and agent referrals being a close second. I think the open houses are going to be a really solid leverage coming up here. I know the winter open houses seem to really suck. You have more of a chance of having a goose egg, but you also have the chance that the people that are coming out are much more serious than the people that are staying home. If you are planning on doing any, we'll call it pay to play. So let's call it, whether it's geographic farming, whether it's systems for sale by owners or expireds, whether it is online leads. Here's just kind of a couple tips for that. Number 1, plan a budget out and know where those dollars are going. So if I'm going to pay for, let's say it was realtor.com or Zillow, I know I'm only going to spend this much. I know that my dollars are going to this type of lead, and I then know what my conversion rate is on that. So if you're going to start paying for these things, know your numbers. If possible, don't sign any long-term contracts. And then I think the most important thing is tracking your return, including your time. So there are too many real estate salespeople that will say, hey, if you only add one more deal, well, then you've paid for this system, which is, number 1, that's only you're just getting your money back, which I don't think is, excuse me, I don't think is that good of a return. If I, put my money in the stock market and all I got out was the money that I already had paid, that's not a good return. But also I'm losing money because in the stock market, I don't have to invest my time. So don't get the one more deal to death. I would encourage you, actually, if somebody calls you with some sort of sales pitch, that you say, hey, send me the numbers, send me the conversion rates. And the vast majority of them will not do that. So if you're going to pay for anything, make sure that you track it. If you have any questions on that, just let me know. I just kind of wanted to go through that a little bit because we're mostly going to talk about your sphere today. So let's talk about, is your business actually profitable? Most of us got into this because we wanted to be not only our own boss, but we didn't want a job. We wanted an actual business, which means that we have to make money and hopefully over and above our time, right? So part of that, I think, is controlling the outflow. So when a commission check comes in, are you scrambling at tax time to, hustle up a couple extra deals so that you can pay your taxes? Are you, is the gross money flowing out as soon as it's coming in? So having a plan for that. Remember those commission checks are your gross checks. Taxes are not taken out of it. And remember too, guys, I know some of you have got spouses with retirement plans, or you have ones from previous jobs. There's no 401k here that's getting, if you just roll through your real estate business and you retire, there's nothing there for you. So make sure that you are setting aside. I always used to set aside at least like 35% for taxes. I would put in a different account. I would set aside a certain percentage for reinvesting back into the business, and then into, savings and, your personal investments and that sort of thing. I would encourage you, if you don't have a business checking account, and only pay your business expenses there. And also what was extremely helpful for me was having a business only credit card. So I know that when I look for my expenses at tax time, I can just grab my credit card statement instead of trying to look through hundreds of pages of statements, which leads into, know what your business expenses are. I would encourage you, and I would even encourage this personally, cancel your credit cards every year or cancel that particular card. Hey, I lost my card. They'll send you a new one. And you would be surprised at how many, payment failure rates you get because you signed up for that subscription to Hulu Plus 6 months ago that you totally forgot about. So that's, know where your business expenses are going. This is probably basic stuff, but I'm surprised every year when I talk to agents who are like, hey, I got to get some extra deals to pay my taxes, which does bring up your number one business expense is taxes. When I realized that, it changed the way that I looked at things. And I said, I'm not saying that there is a bunch of loopholes that you need to know, but I am saying make sure that you're having the proper conversations with your CPA or your tax accountant. Know the that you have somebody that's competent that understands small businesses. You're not just doing TurboTax. Make sure you're not leaving anything on the table. Make sure that you've got a mileage tracking app, or that you really, I know the first year that I had a mileage tracker, I realized I drove almost 40% more for business than what I thought. I looked at, your cell phone should be at least, partially deducted. So make sure that you're not leaving things on the table. When it comes to tax time, I'm sure that I'll send out, I have a big list of real estate tax deductions, but we'll kind of address that at that time. Another thing is know your dollars per hour, right? Know what you're worth per hour. We kind of talked about that last time about delegating, but know that when you're thinking about what you're going to do, when you're considering, well, should I take my own pictures or send somebody out, or well, should I do this transaction myself, or should I hire the transaction coordinator to handle it for me? Or, hey, am I going to run out and meet so-and-so when they are not a qualified lead, or am I going to pass it off to somebody else for referral? Know what and depending on where you are in your business, that's going to be a different thing for everybody. And then also look at your actual net profit. So if you looked at, I would encourage you to kind of see how many hours you think that you're working a week. I know it's really difficult, but at least start getting a guess on it. I used a time clocking app for a little bit. I don't know that it helped all that much, but I tried to figure out, okay, I think I work about this. Sometimes your phone logs help you out. I was checking, okay, how much time is spent on the phone. And I looked at that, and then I looked at my expenses, and I said, okay, this is kind of what if I said, okay, I'm going to make this much per hour. Here's my salary is X amount per year. Did I make profit above that? Because realistically, if you're making more money, but you're also working more, we just have a high paying job. Not exactly what most of us want. So if you have any questions about that, when we sit down with everybody, I don't want to dig into everyone's personal financials, but if you have particular questions about that, some of you probably know more about this than me anyways, that's fine. So let's talk about some conversion ratios. This is directly from Ninja, but yeah, so from cold direct mail, and anytime we're talking cold, we mean they have never spoken with you, you've never had any contact with them. You will get one deal for every 2,000 pieces of mail you send, which actually that sounds like a lot worse of a ratio than it is, especially when you look at the cost of sending a postcard is about 45 cents. It's really about every time you spend $900, you should get a deal. Depending on your average sale price in that neighborhood, that actually might not be as bad as it sounds. I think a much less lucrative number is this 1,600 to 1 internet leads, because especially if you're looking at like a Zillow cold lead and you're paying several $100s a month to get, 10, 12 leads. Now, if you're getting something like Opcity where you have a concierge lead, you have you actually have a physical conversation with that person, you now jump up to somewhere around 7%, which I don't know what that is. I don't know as a ratio. That's 7 to 100 is 1 to what? I don't know what that is. It's like 1 in like 14. I just did that math. So if you're doing Opcity, it's like 1 in 14 or 15. So an Opcity lead basically becomes about the same as an open house. Cold calling 500 to 1, door knocking 100 to 1. Again, depending on how long it takes you to knock on 100 doors, I don't know. That's not the worst ratio I've ever seen. Sign calls and floor calls 20 to 1. I think that number should be a lot higher if you're handling your sign calls and floor calls correctly. I think that should be more like 1 in 5 or 1 in 6. Open houses 1 in 15. That makes sense. You do 2 open houses with 7 people through them each, you should get a deal out of that if you're doing it right. If your open house number is a lot less than that, please let me know. And if you're saying, hey, I get 20 people at every open house and I only get 1 deal per 3 open houses. This is, I think, really interesting. Your past buyers and your past sellers. This surprised me because there's studies that the lifetime value of buyers is a little bit more because of the relationship you build. I think the real problem is people tend to not stay at I think this ratio is a little bit skewed because your past sellers don't have as many lifetime transactions as past buyers. So you just tend to have, and your average agent has more buyers. So 9 to 1, so about 10% and about 25% with your past sellers. But this is the big numbers here is if someone refers someone to you, 2 and 3. So out of every 3 referrals you get, you should close 2 deals. That is obviously significantly better than any of the other numbers here. Which leads us to let's plan out your sphere of influence. I know that some of this we mentioned last week, but it bears repeating, so we're going to. Like I mentioned before, 70% of your average realtor's business comes from their direct sphere of influence. Now, when you take that to a ninja or somebody that kind of works our system, about a third of it is your repeat clients in your database. A third of it is then kind of the referrals from your database. The thing that I think all of us we're leaving on the table is 1/3 of your top producing ninjas referrals were gained during transactions with other clients. So they would be having someone that they are in a deal with and that refers them to somebody during the deal. I started looking back when I was an agent in my own business. I'm like, how often did I have referrals during the transaction? So if you just say, hey, for me, I don't know that I ever did because I don't think I ever asked for it. And if I look, well, in the top producing ninjas, I've left now a third of my business on the table. It's a lot of business. So I would encourage you, and we can talk about procedures for that, but make sure that while you're in and we'll give some examples of this, when you're checking in, you should be checking in with your clients at least weekly, especially your ones that are under contract, but making sure that you're having more of the forward conversation than just the, hey, here's your update from your lender, here's your update from your appraiser, that you're making sure that you're asking about them. Hey, what have you got going on? Oh, this is happening at work. Oh, so-and-so is making a move. Oh, is there anything we can do to, help get them settled? I think asking those extra questions and going a little bit deeper and spending another 2 or 3 minutes on that call is really worthwhile. So statistically speaking, every household in America knows 4 people who move every year. So that is in an 8-year cycle because your average person tends to move every 8 years. That should be from the time that you sell your client a house to the time that you sell their house. That should be 32 transactions that you've gotten them if you have done this correctly. So if you were doing the math, then if you have 50 people in your database, if you got everybody that they knew, you'd be doing that's 200 transactions every year from a database of 50 people. So even if you miss out on 75% of those, you're still talking about 50 transactions a year from a database of 50 people, which most of you guys probably have a database larger than 50 people. So it just shows how much is being left on the table. And part of that is because your average person knows I think it's 7 or 8 realtors, and they will be working with the person that was in contact with them last and who brought them value last. Oh, I think that I don't know if we've really talked about this before, but when I got in, I was always told you have to expand your database. We've got to expand it. We've got to expand it. We've got to expand it and widen it out more, add more people, add more people, add more people. Realistically, though, about your top 10% of your database is who's going to refer you the most business. So my thought is, instead of encouraging you guys, and some of you, if you're brand new, you might have to build more of a database, but instead of widening your database, let's talk about deepening this. So instead of having, 50 people or 100 people that you've got their name and their email address, or 1,000 people, let's have 50 that we've got their name, their email address, their kids' names and birthdays, their anniversary, their pets' names, and what they enjoy doing. Really go deeper into that, and I think that will. I would rather see you guys say, hey, I'm going to stay in touch with 25 people more often than 100 people once a year. I also think that this is the same for your streams of business. I would much rather, instead of, I'm going to dabble a little bit in geographic farming, I'm going to dabble a little bit in open houses, I'm going to dabble a little bit in this, pick 1, 2, 3 things and become the absolute master at those 1, 2, or 3 things. If it's, hey, I'm going to absolutely command my sphere of influence. If it is, I am just going to really win with all my vendors, I'm really going to win with my past clients, and then have a complete strategy for that. Again, we're going to sit down with you guys all individually, either live or I suppose via the internet. We're going to help you figure out what those are and develop a plan for you to go deeper with them. So, all right, let's talk about cleaning up your database, because of course, if we talk about, hey, here's how you should reach your database, and you don't, I guess let's start very basically. You should have your database somewhere, and you do have your database somewhere. Even if it's just in your phone contacts, that's still a database. So I would look at it and say, okay, for me, I noticed that I had some contacts in my phone that had, addresses and email addresses, and some that they ended up being a client, and all their information didn't get added in. So I would encourage you to take a couple of like a couple of names at a time and just start going through your phone and ask yourself a couple of questions. Have you talked to them in, let's say, a year, year and a half? If not, why not? If it's, hey, I just haven't had time, maybe we need to look at that. If it's, I really don't know that I want to continue a relationship with that person, maybe it's time to delete. And if it's, oh my gosh, I really meant to get in contact with them, maybe now that you're going through this is a great time to reach out. I know the question is, well, won't they be wondering why I am reaching out after a year? No, they will not. My financial advisor just reached out to me. I hadn't talked to him in like a year and a half. Hey, just wanted to check in with you, see how you're doing. There's some rebalancing that's going on, and I wanted to chat with you about your portfolio. Oh, okay. I didn't wonder, well, why hasn't he reached out? You were just telling me that you got calls from your Thanksgiving cards that go out that, hey, you haven't talked to me in a long time, but thanks so much for sending that out. People want to hear from you. And I mentioned this last time, but they were doing an interview with one of the ninjas who said, you are doing your sphere a disservice by not reaching out to them. We kind of already mentioned that next level information, that going deeper. By the way, creeping people on Facebook is a great way. If you're too embarrassed to reach out and be like, hey, I totally forget your kids' names, check on Facebook. They're probably gonna have their kids' names. Favorite things, I think, is a great thing to ask for during a transaction. And one of the reasons for that is, let's say that we want to thank somebody for sending us a referral. I can't tell you how many Starbucks gift cards. I have a pile of Starbucks. So if you guys want a Starbucks gift card, let me know. I have a pile of them in my desk at home because, number one, I don't like Starbucks coffee. And for a long time, I didn't drink coffee at all. So I have this pile of Starbucks gift cards from lenders and other agents who give them to me as gifts. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And I remember actually I can't remember I think it was one of my lenders, and they got me, now not as much, but I used to drink a lot of McDonald's Diet Cokes, and they got me a McDonald's gift card, and they're like, hey, grab yourself a couple of Diet Cokes. Like, all right. I was like, wow, okay, they know who I am. So I would encourage you the things to ask if they drink alcohol. Is there a favorite alcoholic beverage that they have? If they have what's a favorite restaurant? Do they have any particular events or teams they really like? Hey, somebody gives you $1 million referral, and hey, they get some Red Wings tickets as a gift. I know that obviously we're not paying people for referrals. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I think that people appreciate being appreciated, just for the relationships. And they will appreciate much more if it's a more personal gift. So, and even if it's not for a gift, maybe it's, I know that they really enjoy this restaurant, and I can reach out to them and say, hey, I saw this restaurant is having a particular sale on, or not sale, like a special on this or something. It's good reach out. The other thing too is I would encourage you, if you do need to expand your database, go outside the box. It's very easy to say, well, my friends are young, and it's weird to reach out to my friends' parents. Okay, we'll start looking to it. Okay, well, who have you worked with in the past? Who are coworkers, bosses? There's an entire 150 ways to grow your database. If you want it, I will send it out to you guys. But there's no reason that there's even, like, for me, I have a guy that I go to the same gas station all the time. And because when you go anywhere anymore in a suit, someone tends to ask what you do. And so he and I have started a relationship, and he always asks me, well, what's going on with the market when I come in? Hey, I'm thinking about this. Is the market going to crash soon? So he's got a couple business cards. And so even if you think, well, I don't even know that person's name, they might know you. And I was actually able to make a referral to him he's like, I'm thinking about refining. I was able to make a referral to a lender that worked out just fine. Like I said, just a reminder, I know that sounds like a huge task. Eat the elephant one bite at a time. 3 to 5 a day. I think it's totally fine. It'll take you a little bit of time, but listen, instead of playing Candy Crush, it's not a bad way to spend a few minutes. Another thing I think is really important here is connect with your sphere the way that they want to be connected with. My mom is a counselor, so I got inundated with all this fun stuff. But she talks about love languages and how everyone feels special in a different way, which I think is not only great for your personal relationships, but certainly for your business. If you know that somebody's a big gift person, hey, maybe it's something that you send them. A misconception about gift people is they don't need something big. A lot of times I'm a little bit of a gift person, and I got a card in the mail from Peg. And I was like, wow, that was really nice that I got that. Or Caitlin has brought me home a little thing of beef jerky. I'm like, oh, wow, that was really So it's $3. It's like, hey, that was really cool. If it's somebody that is really a quality time, like, hey, let's go and grab a beer, or coffee, or dinner, or whatever. If somebody's an introvert, hey, sending them something in the mail, or a little dropping by a little package with some popcorn and some movie recommendations. It can be really easy and really cheap. This doesn't have to break the bank. And I know the push is always to call. Well, not everyone in your sphere may be a caller. They may want a note. They may want a personal visit. They may want a text. They may want a Facebook message. It's all, I would encourage you to be a chameleon. So now let's look at this. So now we're really getting into the nitty gritty of what do we actually need to do to master our sphere. The studies have shown you realistically should be in touch with your database 3 times a month. I know that seems like a lot, but if we're going to not have these 32 transactions get left on the table, well, we need to step it up a notch, right? I have been very concerned. There are a growing number of third-party services that are doing a better job of marketing to your sphere than you are, that will offer a minuscule discount or kickback or something to connect them with an agent. And you may end up finding that your own clients end up coming back to you through a third-party service. And like, wait a minute, how did that happen? So staying top of mind is really important. And I know and I'm just going to kind of handle the objections that I have in my own brain. And if you guys have different ones, let me know. My objection to that is always like, oh my gosh, no one wants to hear from me 3 times a month, which I will posit they're really not, because the chances are if you email them once, they probably will not open that. They're only going to open 16%, right? If you send them a postcard, they probably will take a quick look at that. Oh, hey, that's interesting. And if there's some sort of other lower level connection, I don't think that you're overwhelming everybody. So really your name is getting in front of them a couple times a month, but this isn't saying, hey, you need to call everyone in your sphere 3 times a month. You wouldn't have time for anything. I also would encourage you, if that my next thing is, well, I don't have anything of value to say. Now I think you're really getting into the heart of it as what is valuable to these people. And if there's something there's people that I get emails from. So for example, Dawn Symington is a lender with Mortgage One. I get an email from her every single Monday, or it was actually Tuesday this week, that has the weekly, it just has a really nice, easy interest rates and what her turnaround times are, and maybe a little video that gives me something that's interesting. It takes me 30 seconds to read. And for me, that's super valuable, because then I don't have to go and look, okay, am I going to go on Zillow Mortgages? Is that accurate? Am I going to check the Fed? Am I going to go on the internet? 10 seconds, I can see what's going on with the rates. And then I've now got a valuable piece of information for my clients. So look at what's valuable to your people, and we'll talk more about that. An email newsletter is a must, especially guys, you already have 2 email newsletters already set up for free for you, in back at you, the at home and the real estate update. Also, it is very easy to set up Prospect Square, which is another automated one that you have for free. Or if you really wanted to pay some money, you can pay $25 a month to get HomeBot. But either way, you have at minimum 3 different email letters to choose from that are provided for you by the company. There's no excuse not to have an email newsletter. I think, again, pop buys are vastly underrated. It does not even have to be, if you're like, hey, I know they don't have time, I don't want to bother them, drop them a little package that's got a couple little things in there for them. Now my mind blanked as to what EARs. Equity assessment reports. Yes. Ears was supposed to help me remember it. And of course, then equity assessment reports. We'll talk about how often those should go out. But again, people want to know what's going on with their home and with their neighborhood. Of course, I think postcards, again, and we'll talk about value. I think for the amount of money that it costs you to send a postcard, I always enjoy getting physical mail now, because I get hundreds and hundreds of emails every day. 90% of what I get in the mail is either it's an election season and I'm getting political candidates, or somebody's soliciting donations from, wherever, or their bills. Or credit card offers. So it's really nice to get a postcard or something else. Of course, taking somebody, dinner, coffee, whatever. This does not have to be real estate related. You'd be surprised at how many of your clients kind of consider you friends after your transaction. And for us, it was before all the COVID stuff, we used to try and at least like once a week, once every 2 weeks, take somebody who's a past client, just I know dinner gets expensive. Hey, we're going to go have a cup of coffee. We're going to go have a beer or something. And it makes a Real estate will come up, but it doesn't need to be posed as a real estate event, right? Just, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Let's go grab a cup of coffee and see how you're doing. I don't know that client appreciation events, I think that they will come back. Obviously, that's been a little bit stunted with COVID stuff. I have seen some people do virtual client appreciation events. I think what was much more, if you were having a budget for client appreciation events, is to send everybody a little gift or a, hey, I appreciate you, and here's I don't know. I'll think about that, about some ideas. We'll come up with some actual ideas too. Of course, you should be connecting with your sphere on social media. Remember, social media is just another database and is just another way to connect. Sometimes I feel like when we say social media, it's like, oh, do I have to be doing ads? Like, no, you can just go on there and chat with your people, interact with them, comment on their stuff, send them messages. It doesn't have to be real estate related. Don't worry about it. Video, as I will continue to harp on, is in my opinion, one of your best ways to connect, because especially if you don't want to call people, it's the easiest way for them to see you and hear your voice. And then, of course, you can, I know it sounds crazy, but you can physically pick up your phone and you can dial their number. So, hello.
Morning.
All right. So let's talk about figuring out a plan. As I've said before, I think that for our type of agents, developing habits may be better than developing tracking systems. I know, yes, it'd be nice to track all your conversations and this and this. I think what would be better is get in the habit of every day, check your hot list. The first thing that I guess have a hot and warm list is the first thing. It can be on a sheet of paper. It can be in your phone. For me, it used to be on a whiteboard. But your hot list, again, a reminder, is anyone that within the next 30 days could buy or could either write an offer or could put their home live. Those people I would be checking in with at least minimum a couple of times a week. I know it gets easy to like, hey, these buyers, they haven't seen any listings. Even if you just check in and say, hey, I haven't seen much, just kind of wanted to check in with you. I think that's really important. And that will be the first thing. If you come to me and say, hey, I have no business, I'll say, well, what's your hot list look like? Because then you start thinking about those stories. Well, Bob and Jane are kind of waiting, but they're really looking for acreage and they really want this. Okay, well, can we think outside the box here? And can we put them into something that's a little bit different location? Can they go up in price a little bit? Can they do this? And so kind of finagling your hot list. Looking at your warm list, I would say anybody that's either looking to buy or sell in the next 6 months, or anybody that has a big life change that's come up. I have a whole list of life changes, but if they're getting married, they're getting divorced, their family's expanding, their family's contracting. Kids are moving out of the house, kids are moving back in the house, parents are moving back in with them, kids are going off to college. The big life changes are the things that you should really focus on. So if and again, if you just stay on top of your social media or on top of anything, you will know what's happening with these people. So those would be my warm list. I would try and check in with them at least every month. And I always forget all the H's of Sean Carpenter's 4-H club, but the ones that I always do is one of the first things I do is I go and I check my social media, see who's got a birthday, who's got an anniversary. I try and check the anniversary in advance so that I like to call them up or text them and say, hey, just a reminder, your anniversary is coming up. Don't forget, don't screw it up. If they've got birthdays that day, if you've got their phone number, texting them something other than just happy birthday. And if not, just at least sending a message saying, hey, happy birthday. Hope you have just a fantastic day. I appreciate you having, in my life here. And then also your weekly customer calls. I would schedule all of these things. So I would have a time where I know that so for me, it was every Monday, any of my active buyers got specifically a call to check in with them. Every Tuesday, any of my actives or upcoming sellers got a call. It was in my calendar, and I said, I know that this is going to happen. And my clients had an expectation. So it also reduced the amount of times that they were calling me up and saying, hey, have we had X showings or have we had feedback on this? They knew that they were going to get a call at certain times. Your hot list and your warm list, I would encourage you, plan it as part of your routine. If you come into the office, if you are an affirmations person, great. If you're writing notes, great. If you're at your hot and warm list, have that all be a part of hey, these are the things I've got to do. Because really believe that if you came in every day or into your home office or wherever you are, and you wrote your affirmations, if you either wrote handwritten notes, or I'll send the slide deck out to you guys. Either wrote handwritten notes or your text messages or whatever that connection is. We'll call it connecting. You did your 4-H where you're reaching out to people who've got birthdays, and then you made your customer calls and reach outs. If you only got that done and then you did nothing else the rest of the day, I still think you're better off than 90% of agents. Plan 2 weekly real estate reviews or equity assessment reports. The rate of success with these is the most successful thing was doing them in person. If you can sit down for 15 minutes, I know we talked about this last week. If you mail them with a phone call, so that was 1 out of 3, you ended up getting a deal out of it. So that's what, 45%. And Peter was talking about that at Ninja. If you mail and you call, you end up with about 15%. And if you just mail, it was about 10%. And if you email, it was like 0%. So I'd at least encourage you to, I mean, if nothing else, mail it and give them a phone call and just say, did you receive this? Do you have any questions? Right. And we'll talk more about scheduling all this. And then 50 live interviews. I know that's a tough ask. Live interviews can be anything that is some sort of interaction with somebody. So again, we talked about going through the people that have had life changes. I think that's important. Having a Sphere calendar, whether it is electronic or it's on paper, with built-in reasons to call. So you already know in advance, when I talk to X person, it's going to be for this reason. Some of those may change, but at least having an idea. Plan and pay for your mailers in advance. If you've already paid for them and you've already ordered them, you're probably going to send them out. And some systems actually schedule them for you. And then really having a good referral game plan. So if you are getting referrals from your Sphere, making sure that you have a plan. This is exactly what happens when I get a referral from my Sphere. They get a call thanking them. They get another message when we meet. They get another message when we start showing houses. They get another message when we go under contract. They get a thank you or a gift at the end, and then checking in with them afterwards. So, and then also, and we're going to get into really planning this. So planning week by week. I would encourage you that pick one day, and your week doesn't have to start on Monday. I don't care when your week starts. Some people that, for me, it was like Sunday night is when I would try and plan. Other people, it might be they want to plan at the end of the week on Friday. Some people might want to do Monday morning. But planning, here's the things that you should plan are, number one, what are the non-negotiable personal appointments that you have? So what are the times that you're going to spend with family that are non-negotiable, and when is that going to be? Number two, what are the non-negotiable times that you're going to have to work on your business? So if that's making contacts, if it's working on your systems, if it is updating your bios, if whatever it is, making sure that you have time blocked out and follow that, where I know that I'm going to every Wednesday from 10:30 to 11:30, I'm going to work on my business. And here's the 3 things I want to accomplish. And then having built-in time for, I would leave open appointment times. So I would just block off like you have an appointment and say, I'm going to go on appointments at these times. You may say, hey, I don't have appointments scheduled yet. Well, if you've got the time blocked off, you may find that you're getting yourself some appointments to fill that time. And then I think the way that I view this is, if you have this big goal to win the year, we now have to win the quarter. We have to win the month. We have to win the week. We have to win the day. So if we start there and we back that out, if we say, okay, I know that I have a daily plan, and it doesn't have to be much. It could just be, I'm going to wake up and go for a 30-minute walk, and I'm going to read for 10 minutes. And that's like I know that if I do that, I win the day. That's great. It might be, I'm going to do 2 hours of reaching out to my Sphere. Okay. I don't know what that is. But I would actually encourage you, write down, if you are an affirmation writer, write down what it is. If you like, what are the 2 or 3 things I need to do to win today? So like I could tell you the things that I need to do. Well, today's a little bit weird, but generally speaking, I can tell you the things that I need to do to win my day. So, you know what? I want to talk about leveraging your Sphere later. Let's actually talk about this. So if we're going to pull out our calendar, and I would encourage you to do this. And sometimes having a physical calendar, bankers will give them to you for free. Sometimes that can help, or at minimum pulling out your Google Calendar and your database. And we're going to combine these, right? So we're going to say, I know that on X day, and again, if you use your at home or the real estate update or Prospect Square, it's all automatic. So you don't have to worry about that. But if you plan out, and I used to do it for the year. I know that in January, the postcard that's going out is a Happy New Year. Here's a couple of I always used to do some funny New Year's resolutions. In February, it may be, I'm trying to remember all of the exact ones. I've got a list. In March, I'm going to do I know that St. Patrick's Day is the popular one, but I'm trying to remember what the one I would do. Shoot, see now, of course, I'm blanking. April used to always be March would be the spring cleanups. Here's a checklist of things that you got to make sure that you do. April started to be here are some really, now that the weather's warm, here's a couple of places that you need to check out. Oh, February was, here's a couple of winter activities to do that you might not have thought of. And like we mentioned last time, not just mentioning the activity, hey, it's, make sure you check out the DIA, but hey, make sure that you're checking out this particular exhibit and go check this one particular piece that's really interesting. Those are the things that I wouldn't just find from a quick Google, I think are going to be the most important. And so let's take, for example, if you do a spring checklist, everybody's like, oh, you should check your gutters and okay, great. We all know that. What some people don't think about is, have you checked and make sure you probably got your tax bill? Did you make sure that your principal residence exemption was at 100? And did you check to see what your assessed value went up and how much did it? And do you need to fight that? No, most people don't know you can fight your assessed value. If it's the summer, instead of, hey, here's a couple of, here's the list of, here's the list of 5 places that do fireworks. It's, hey, if you're going to go to the Orion Oaks fireworks, here's where you should park and here's what time you should get there so you beat the crowd, and here's the best spot to see them, right? So having that extra insight, again, going deeper instead of wider. And now you might say, hey, well, wait a minute. If I'm doing fireworks for Orion Oaks and my sphere is all across Southeast Michigan, does this mean that you might need to have a couple of different postcards made? Yes, it does. And what I would encourage you to do is, I think it's in here somewhere, but we'll talk about it now. Look at dividing them into groups. That might be by geography. It might be by interests. It might be a couple of different ways. You might say, for fall, I know that I've got some people that are hunters. I'm going to send them something different than my people that are big football fans. Or if it's, so you may end up even having different kind of groups. And your Google Contacts is great with this because you can label them and then you can just filter by different labels. So you can have overlapping labels. So maybe I've got a Clarkston group, but I've also got a people that love canning fruits and vegetables group. And so those can overlap. I think that's really important because now it's more relevant. And again, if you're somebody that cans fruits and vegetables but couldn't give a crap about football, you probably don't give a crap about getting a football schedule, and vice versa. So dividing them into groups can be good. And also a note on that, we'll talk about that in a second. So making sure that you plan those in the month. And like I said, I would take some time now and start at least having a general outline of what those postcards were going to be. And like I said, if it was me, I would order them all now. I mean, could something change? Sure. But I would at least order them the month or two in advance so that once they're ordered, again, your chances of sending them out are a lot higher. I also, by the way, I would put on your calendar, maybe it's the first of the month, maybe it's the 30th. Here's where I'm going to plan my postcard for next month so that doesn't get, lost in the wash. So, and again, I can't say for sure that because I don't know that you guys are going to track this, but what they should be getting is every single person in your sphere should be getting every month your email newsletter, a valuable postcard, and they should be having some sort of lower level interaction with you. They should either be seeing your comments on social media. They should be maybe getting a text message from you. Maybe they're seeing one of your videos. Maybe you're commenting on something that they posted. Maybe you're sending them a message. So those 3 at least monthly. Now for me, the best way to do that, because I didn't track after every time I went on social media and said, oh, well, I talked to this and this and this. I had and I think I've said this before, on my calendar, I had like 3 or 4 names every day. And once I've noticed that, okay, I've interacted with them, I just cross them off. And that seemed to be a way to not miss anybody. Because remember too, you're like, if you're using Facebook or Instagram, you're only going to see about 10% of your friends, and you see them most often. So you can easily get lost. And it's a nice way to make sure that you don't miss anybody. So 3 a month, and this might be one of your monthlies, but every quarter, one of your 3 should be that they get either a text, a phone call, some sort of face-to-face interaction, and an equity assessment report, at least quarterly, and at very, very, very minimum bi-yearly, right? Things can change in a quarter, and they can certainly change in in 6 months. So every year, every person should get an in-person or at minimum a Zoom or phone consultation. That would be one of your EAR appointments. And that should give them here is a general value for your home. Here's a full in-depth CMA. Your quarterly EARs could just be here's like 4 houses that have sold in your neighborhood. It doesn't have to be anything super in-depth. But yearly, they should get a real estate health checkup, right? Where, hey, you go to your doctor every year, let's check how your real estate is, and have it be comprehensive. Don't just, here's the value of your home. Here is what your equity looks like. Hey, I know that you mentioned that your loan is at 4.5%. Maybe you should think about refining. What are you paying in insurance? Is that an appropriate rate? What do has your tax rate gone up? Is there anything that you need to kind of start planning for in terms of repairs? So kind of an overall home health checkup, I think, is really good. And like I said, putting this all into one, even if it's its own specific calendar, is, I think, really good. I also think the one thing that I missed, actually, that I'm putting in here that I'm realizing is in my calendar, a house anniversary is a fantastic. You should have every single one of your clients' house anniversaries in your phone. Obviously, if that gets a little bit weird when it's like your seller and they moved out of state, okay, fine, sure. But especially your buyers, make sure their house anniversary is in there. Send them a little card, send them a note, send them an email with a picture of their home, send them a text. Hey, I can't believe it was already 3 years ago today that we bought your house. Hopefully you're doing well. So hopefully that creates a pathway to what they should. Does that clarify how this should be done?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And like I said, I would encourage you, make sure, even if it's the same person, so that you could replicate the calendar monthly, even if that same list of people is on the same day every month, they're not going to know whether they're on the same day every month or on the same day every quarter. And then that way your calendar can be, especially if it's in Google or whatever, it can be replicatable and you don't have to keep doing it. And it makes it easy for you because you never have to think of who am I reaching out to today, and what am I gonna reach out to them about? So let's talk about actually leveraging those people, right? And really increasing your turnover and your conversion rate from your sphere. I know that sometimes too, when we talk about your sphere, we realize these are not, if you start looking at them too much just as your database and it's just a source of business, you get really out of whack really quickly. Just remember that these are your friends, your family, the people that like, know, and trust you. Because otherwise, sometimes it can seem, if you're not coming from a place of genuine care and concern, they'll know. And if you're just looking for business, they'll know. And then you won't want to reach out, because we all know that we don't want to be salespeople, and it turns into a mess. So I would encourage you, the things that you're reaching out with, try and bring real value and care about your people. So the first we already mentioned, go for the referral during the transaction. I think the best way to do this is while you're having just a checkup conversation, preferably further along in the transaction, and ask them about what's going on in their life. And then I would throw it out to them. Hey, obviously we've had a great transaction so far. Is there anybody else that we can help that is having a struggle moving? I know that moving is, and I wouldn't say, hey, do you know anybody that wants to move? Is anybody having a struggle? Is anybody, I know the market's really tough. Has anyone thought about buying a house that just doesn't want to go into the market? Or maybe they've really been struggling with their credit. So I would have more of like a specific ask than just, anybody that's thinking about moving. I think that can really lead to a deeper question. And like we said, ask the additional questions. Make sure and ask more about kids or about family or about what they've got going on. Hey, if they're taking a vacation, hey, where are you going? Is this? And the keys to, I would maybe even have your notepad out while you're talking, because now I know that, oh yeah, they went out to Yellowstone, and I can send them a funny, postcard or something that's, not not from Yellowstone, but you know what I mean? So you can start to get those things of what they've done, their experiences, and kind of build that into their whole profile, if you will. I know that we already talked about dividing them into groups, but I would also try and leverage their circles. The chances are is that the people that you know, they're probably in one of your circles. So for me, I've got the guys that I know that duck hunt, and the guys, all my real estate friends, and I've got my people that I know from because I went to church with them a long time ago, and people that I know in my neighborhood. And chances are I'm in one of their circles as well. So if you can leverage if you start to understand their different interests, you can understand how to leverage their different circles as well. So maybe you're in their canning group, but maybe you need to find a way into their book club friends, right? And that just comes from asking the questions. Because chances are, if you're in one of their circles, if there's certain buddies, if I call them up right now, we're probably going to talk about hunting. It's that time of year. But if I'm asking them about something else that they've got going on, it then leads to different conversations. And they may just be thinking of you in that circle of, if buddy A is thinking of me as, well, Peter's a hunting buddy. And if any hunting buddies are thinking of moving, I'll refer them to him, but not necessarily thinking about, well, my big sports fans, they also need an agent, and Peter can take care of them too. That's, I also think it is incredibly important. It was, and I'm not going to remember the numbers exactly. I think it was 6% of people that were surveyed said that their realtor never reached out to them. Or I'm sorry, 6%. 6% said that their realtor engaged on a regular basis. 72% said they never engaged, right?
It was 17% that said I remember this one, 17% of people only use their realtor
the
second time.
That is correct. So but I think just from contact, I think it was like only 6% had regular contact with their realtor after closing. Something like 70% never heard from them, and like 20-something% had, well, it was kind of intermittent. So I think really nailing the post-closing process. I would encourage you the next day, hey, first night, and you just sat through this, but how'd the first night go? Is everything, kind of as you expected it? Any, questions or things that you're trying to figure out? And then a couple of weeks in, hey, how's the unpacking going? Are you kind of getting settled in? Have you tried X restaurant down the street yet? So really nailing that post. I would say they should at least be hearing from you every few weeks for the first couple months after closing. So at least once a month for the first 6 months. Because realistically, when are they going to be having the conversations about real estate? It's when they just bought their house, because they're having housewarming parties. People are coming over and congratulating them. And now is that time that if they're going to write you a review or give you a referral, now is going to be that great time. So, and again, I would write all this down of what your plan is. I would say, okay, my plan is that I'm going to, and for me, it kind of came into a little bit of a playbook of, I know that I'm going to reach out on these days after closing. I would actually put up my phone to reach out. I had, hey, how's like the first week going? How's unpacking going? Have you tried X place? Have you gone and turned in your principal residence and your transfer affidavit yet? So there was kind of those again, reasons to follow up. A couple of additional kind of thoughts. It's very easy, especially for our type of realtor, to be an accidental success, because I just was talking to an agent who said, I did $10 million this year. I have no idea how I did it. And I don't feel like I was focused at all. And I'm like, how much more could I have done if I'd really been intentional? That's the truth. It's not just being intentional with your time, being intentional with really what activities are you doing and when and how consistent they are. And even if you just took a look, even if you said, I'm not going to add any new activities in, what have I done in the past? If I could do that on a more consistent basis, how much more would it? So, hey, we send out Thanksgiving cards. What if we sent out cards for every month? Just how much more would that one activity bring me in for business? Like I said, having and this is for any lead generation, whether you're doing open houses or online leads, have a plan to follow up. If it's an open house lead, where does that lead go? Once that sign-in sheet comes out, if you were like me, unfortunately, in the beginning, it was my sign-in sheet goes into a folder and then it gets lost on my desk. And then I realize, oh my gosh, I haven't talked to that person in 6 months. Yeah. So does it become part of your routine at the end of an open house that all I'm doing is going to add them into my phone contacts and put a quick calendar event to call them next week? As simple as that. And understanding too what are the timelines, right? If they're an open house, they're probably 3 to 6 months out. So understanding that I'm going to have to work them for that amount of time. Do your homework ahead of time. If you are thinking about doing online leads, or if you're thinking about really getting into open houses, do your homework. What open houses am I going to do? How am I going to make them successful? If I'm going to spend an hour setting up signs and an hour taking down signs, I'm going to try and have the most successful open house I can have. And for me, that didn't mean the most high priced. A lot of times it was some of the lowest priced, because I know I'm going to have the most activity. If you're going to do geographic farms, make sure that you know the turnover rate in the area. Make sure that you understand, do any other agents have more than 25% market share? What's the average, not life expectancy, what's the average residency expectation of somebody in that neighborhood? And what does the average equity position look like in that neighborhood? If you're going to do online leads, hey, I'm spending this much for this amount of leads. I know that I'm going to convert this many of them. What is my average sale price in that area? So what can I expect for a GCI for the money I'm putting out? Like I said, know your return going in. These are easy to figure out. And if you have, especially if you're doing any sort of active lead generation, like if you're geographic farming, if you said, hey, Peter, I'm thinking about doing geographic farming, it's very easy to know what your return is going to be. Just statistically, if you send a certain number of postcards to a neighborhood with a certain turnover rate, you will, just by osmosis almost, you will get some of those listings, and we can kind of figure that out. So you'll know, well, okay, if I'm going to, devote 18 months to farming this neighborhood, how many listings can I expect to get out of it? Decide if you're going to do check equity or sweat equity. So if you are, let's say that you're new and you don't want to spend $900 a month farming to 1,800 houses or 1,500 houses, but I'm going to print off black and white flyers for free and go and put them in people's newspaper slots, because don't put them in their mailbox. It's illegal. Or in the door, go up and talk to them and say, hey, how you doing? Or, hey, I don't have the time to do that, but I've got some extra money I want to dump into my business, and I'm going to send out postcards. I'm going to do that every month or every 2 weeks. And just remember, the colder the fire, the more tending it needs, right? So the longer that you haven't talked to somebody, or the less that you know of them, the more tending that they'll need to become, a deal for you. I know that sometimes the colder the fire, the more likely we are to let it just go out. I know that's the case for me. And the way that I turned around on viewing this is, if let's say that there's an open house lead that I've got that I haven't talked to in 6 months, or a past client I haven't talked to in 5 years, the chance that they're going to call me up and use me out of nowhere is 0, right? So I 100% will not work for them or with them. If I call them up, they may still not work with me, but they might. And yes, I know, is it embarrassing to be like, I haven't heard from you in a long time, I don't want to hear from you? Yes, that's a big fear. I get it. I have it myself. But I think that if that is the case, especially if it's your past clients, hey, I'm realizing that, and it would just be totally honest. Hey, I realize I haven't really had a great system to make sure my past clients understand what's going on with their equity, and I'm looking to fix that. So, hey, I'm sorry we haven't been in touch, but I'm looking to now make sure that my past clients know what's going on with their house. Or you could even say, hey, I know that you weren't thinking about. You might even just say, hey, I know that you weren't thinking about me much, because they probably don't remember that's been 5 years. Like, think of a deal that you closed in 2018. Does it seem like, if they called you up, that oh my gosh, I haven't heard from you in 4 years, or it'd be, hey, how you doing? I think that your clients have a shorter memory than we think they do, and especially with COVID, have definitely a weird understanding of time. I really think that the vast majority, if you call them up and just say, hey, you've been there 5 years. I know a lot of people move in 8. I've been following you on social media. I saw that you guys had a couple of babies. How's this house still working for you? And even if it is totally business, if you're like, I don't want to call up and ask somebody how they are, because we weren't like that during our business transaction. So have it be a business transaction. Hey, we were locked down for 3 months. Did that change at all the way that you thought about your house? Did you find out that you loved your house? Did you find out that you hated it? I think that's a good question. So don't be afraid to just reach out. There's literally no downside. And I really think that you'll find out that at least for me, I found out that I've built up a much worse conversation in my mind than what actually happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, again, it goes back to the type of agents that we tend to attract here, that, again, tend to be very good and very caring agents, but also very afraid of having somebody tell them, anything negative. So that's, we stayed to an hour. If you have questions, let me know. like I said, I'll be sending out an invite or available times. Hopefully in the next, well, I'll be sending them out this week for the next 2 weeks. I know that we want to kind of get this done for the holidays to have either an in-person. I'd love for you guys to come in person, or at minimum to set up a Zoom to go over your, and you don't have to have a business plan ready. We don't have to, it can be as minimal as, I'd really like to do 3 deals, and I just want to make sure that I'm contacting the people I know once a month, and I'll shoot them a text message. Okay, it can be that minimum, or it can be, hey, I really want to change from 30% sellers and 70% buyers to 60% sellers, 60% buyers. How do I go about doing this? I want to look at my transaction ratios and look at these 3 lead sources and what my returns are, and I want to start geographic. It doesn't matter what it is. So don't be worried that, oh, Peter's going to judge my business. I don't care. If your business plan is, hey, I want to hold an open house every 3 months and I want to do 1 deal, that's fine. It does not bother me at all. So thanks for joining us on the Google Meet, people. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful Thanksgiving. I will share out the slide deck and the recording with everybody. So other than that, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We'll see you soon. Oh, Kim joined in too.